There is no more sickness, no more harm in God's eternal home. In God's eternal home. In God's eternal home. Thank you, Lord, for this man who freely gave his gift. He gave himself to honor God in the way he lived, teaching students how to dream, how to build esteem. With great passion he was there, taking time to care, shedding light, spreading hope to everyone he knew. Faithful father, husband, friend, he did all he could do. When hard times came his way, his faith was spirit-led. When the storms of life blew in, this is what he said. Christ brings hope through the pain, his love will remain. Christ will stand by our side, peace will now abide. Now he's standing in his new home, embraced with loving arms. There is no more sickness, no more harm in God's eternal home. In God's eternal home. In God's eternal home. Thank you, Lord, for this man who freely gave his gift. He gave himself to honor God in the way he lived, teaching students how to dream, how to build esteem. With great passion he was there, taking time to care, shedding light, spreading hope to everyone he knew. Faithful father, husband, friend, he did all he could do. When hard times came his way, his faith was spirit-led. When the storms of life blew in, this is what he said: Christ brings hope through the pain, his love will remain. Christ will stand by our side, peace will now abide. Now he's standing in his new home, embraced with loving arms. There is no more sickness, no more harm in God's eternal home. In God's eternal home. In God's eternal home.
Let's pray together. God, we have gathered today to say goodbye to a friend, a colleague, family member, and beloved member of this congregation. We thank you for Barry Jones. We thank you for the life he lived and the legacy that he leaves. May this hour be an hour not only of sharing memories, but also of worshiping you, someone that he loved as much as life itself. Guide our thoughts and our prayers and our actions this hour. In Christ's name, amen. We're glad you're here today. The bulletin contains a list of who will be speaking. We won't be coming up and introducing everyone as they come. So if your name is on there, come on up and we will be ready for you. But we are glad you're here. Let's worship together.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for being here for our family and my dad. You only get one good shot at a funeral, and so thank you for hitting my dad's shot at this. I'm only going to tell a brief story. How does a son, encapsulate their relationship with their father? When I was young, my father's kind of chosen big activity with me was showing sheep. And there's a lot of ways to love a kid that don't involve building a sheep barn. But this is what my dad chose. And it's saying a lot. It's kind of, I always thought it was kind of a gratuitous thing for him, because it's saying a lot for like a journalist to choose this project. Somewhere about 83, 84, 85, we were really hitting it. I mean, we were on our game. We were doing great. And our big show every year was the Dixie National in Mississippi. It's the big winter show in Mississippi. And I'd won at the county level. I'd won at the district level. And my dad was sending me out into the big arena for the big winter show. And showmanship was our big event, right? Where they're really judging you more than the sheep. And so I'm taking my sheep through all the paces and everything. And the key for a little kid, 9 years old, in sheep showmanship is to keep your eye on that judge. Keep your eye on the judge. You never take your eye off the judge. So I did everything I was supposed to do. Finally, the judge starts placing people, right? He's pointing to them randomly, putting them in. And to make a long story short, I thought he was placing them from first to last. So the first two people go up, and I'm like, oh, man, how many people is he going to place before I get up there, And so I'm really worried about it. Sure enough, he literally chooses me last. And so I take my sheep, line it up or whatever, and the judge takes the mic, and that's when I realized that he was actually placing them from last to first. And I just won this thing. And so I'm focused on the judge. I got my eyes on the judge like I'm supposed to, and he's talking a little bit about all the contestants, and I have no idea what he said because I'm just so elated. But finally, when he's done, I'm able to take my eye off the judge, and I'm glancing around a little bit. There's people lining the arena. I can't find Dad anywhere. So the judge sends all the sheep down, all of us with our sheep down a little chute on the side, and the chute goes down the side of the arena, and then it takes a turn out to all the sheep pens. And so I carry my sheep down through that little chute, and I look up, and there in the turn of the chute is Dad, and he's leaning over the railing, and he's like, "Great job, son." And I told you it was a simple story. That was the punchline. But I have this vivid memory of him being proud and happy for me. It's a simple story, but I had a professor in seminary. He used to say that he had lost a child when she was in elementary school. And he said the first job of any parent is just to delight in the child God gave you the way God would. And I have this image that's been especially important to me over the last 2 weeks since he died of my dad delighting in me, and I appreciated that memory.
I'm Barry's brother, Stan Jones, and if one of you have told me that I look like my brother, 30 of you have. So I just want to let you know that he's in the heavenly realm now, and he forgives you. Now, I've known Barry longer than anybody here, I'm assuming. And when I first knew him, when I first could name him, he was Babby, because I didn't do R's back then. Okay? Then a few years later, over in Cobb County, our dad was building us a beautiful brick home over on Gordon Road, but we were at the time living in a one-room converted smokehouse behind our grandparents. And one time, Daddy, it was in the wintertime, and we were going to bed, and we were all sleeping in one bed, all four of us. And Daddy said, move over, little dog. The big dog's coming in. Barry appropriated that and did it every night for the whole time we were there. I was a little dog. He was the big dog. Now, the big dog has moved on. And the little dog is sad. But we can't let sadness overcome us. I remember when C.S. Lewis's wife died, he married a much younger American poetess named Joy Grisham. And he adopted her sons, or the youngest son anyway. And I remember the movie Shadowlands, where Anthony Hopkins, at the end of the movie, the boy can't understand how Lewis can handle this much grief. And he said something simple that his wife had told him before she died of cancer. The pain I know now is the happiness that I knew then. That's the deal. And that is the deal. We take it all. It's all encompassed. And when Barry and I were kids, when we were in pre-pube, I had this thing about, and I was very imaginative. I thought up all kinds of things for us to play and be. And it was usually based on Roy, Gene, John Wayne, Flash Gordon, or Tarzan. And I always had to be the lead character. And he was very indulgent of me in those days. Now, later on, when we were teenagers, I never got tired of being Flash Gordon. He got very tired of being Ming the Merciless, of the dictator of the planet Mongo. So I guess I got to be irritating. But before he started driving and getting girlfriends, Barry and I did everything together. So I experienced most things with him 2.5 years before I was actually his age. But he didn't seem to resent that either. In fact, later on in life, as we remembered back on our school days, I was his institutional memory, remembering people that he hung out with that he didn't remember until I reminded him of them. But a couple more things, and I'm going to sit down. The greatest influence in our life was in human form, was our paternal grandmother, Emma Thompson Jones. She placed so much value on education. She had about 2 years herself. But the woman read all the time. She prayed all the time. In her 91 years, she read all the way through the Bible 27 times. And she passed that on to me and Barry. And whereas when we were playing the games, I always had to be the hero of my own narrative, it was that grandmother that made us realize that the ultimate hero of all our narratives is Jesus Christ. And we carried that through our whole lives, and we carry it still today. Now, the only thing I want to leave with you is what we really have left here with Barry gone. And I've in the past 25 years, I've spoken at about 8 funerals, and I always have to bring up this poem. Now, one thing Barry did in his life is an avid reader. We love reading, we love movies, we love college football. He had read at least one biography of every president of the United States, with the exception of that ridiculous buffoon who will go nameless here. Political statement, yes, but my favorite poem was by a great president and a great man, Abraham Lincoln. And he wrote it about his visit back to Spencer County, Indiana, when he was 37 years old. He had lived there from the time he was 7 till he was 21. And he wrote a poem called Memory. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, or I'm not going to recite the whole thing, but part of it that is totally true for me, and I hope it is for you. My childhood home I see again, and sadden with a view. But still, as memory crowds my brain, there's pleasure in it too. O memory, thou midway world, twixt earth and paradise, where things decayed and loved ones lost, in dreamy shadows rise, and freed from all that's earthly, vile, seem hallowed, pure and bright, like scenes in some enchanted isle, all bathed in liquid light. As dusky mountains please the eye when twilight chases day, as bugle notes that passing by in distance die away, as leaving some grand waterfall we lingering list its roar, so memory will howl all we've known, but know no more. Thank you all for being here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Henry Jones. I'm the son of Coy Jones. And my grandfather was Barry, who I and we all affectionately called Poppy. And I'm sure many of you know his fascination with and love of kind of Texas and cowboys. And one of his kind of favorite poems, pieces of writing, hung on Betty and Barry's kind of office door. And I'm just going to read that now because it was one of his favorite things, and I think that that's a great way to remember him. To remember him. Write your heart, stand by the code, and it will stand by you. Ask no more and give no more than loyalty, honesty, courage, respect, and fairness. Don't decorate words. Make your meaning clear. Say it plain and save some space for breath. Never interfere with something that ain't bothering you. If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Never grumble. It makes you about as welcome as a sidewinder in a cow camp. If you're riding ahead of the herd, take a look back every now and then to make sure it's still there. If it don't matter so much how you ride it, it doesn't matter how long you ride as well as you ride it well. If you're going to take a drink, make sure it's ahead of the herd as well. The first thing you do when you get up in the morning is put on your Stetson. And don't worry about biting off more than you can chew. I'm sure your mouth is plenty big enough. Don't get mad at people who know more than you do. It's not their fault. Talk low, talk slow, and don't say too much. Generally, you ain't learning anything if your mouth is a John. If you want to forget all your troubles, take a little walk in a brand new pair of high-heeled riding boots. The wildest critters live in the city. Trust nobody in the game and always cut the cards. The quickest way to double your money is folding it in half and putting it back in your pocket. No matter who says what, don't believe it if it doesn't make sense. Don't let so much reality into your life that you don't make room for dreams. Making it in life is kind of like busting rocks. You're going to get thrown a lot. And the simplest secret is to always keep getting back on. And never miss a chance to rest your horse. And go after life as if it's something that's got to be roped in a hurry before it gets away. And most importantly, don't squat with your spurs on. That was his code of the West, as he liked to call it. So thank you all for being here.
I'm Lainey, and I'll be reading I've Learned by Maya Angelou for my Poppy. I've learned that no matter what happens or how bad it seems today, life does go on and it will be better tomorrow. I've learned that you can tell a lot about people by the way they handle these 3 things: a rainy day, lost luggage, and tangled Christmas tree lights. I've learned that regardless of your relationship with your parents, you'll miss them when they're gone from your life. I've learned that making a living is not the same thing as living a life. I've learned that you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt in both hands. You need to be able to throw something back. I've learned that whenever I decide something with an open heart, I usually make the right decision. I've learned that even when I have pains, I don't have to be one. I've learned that every day you should reach out and touch someone. People love a warm hug or just a friendly pat on the back. I've learned that I still have a lot to learn. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Thank you.
I'm Lily, and this is a piece I wrote for my Poppy. My Poppy was chiefly among the introductions to my understanding of a gentleman. His tender, patient love for my Nana, remains a striking example of what one should be like. While I was his granddaughter, I couldn't doubt that I was loved, that I was beautiful, and that I was capable of anything. He inspired drive in me, fostered a desire for learning, while persisting as a pillar of warmth and wisdom. I knew pride in his smiles and peace in his bare hugs. His memory will endure for me in belly laughs and bulldogs, in southern drawls in the state of Texas, and in love, abundant as a blueberry bush and rare as a mermaid's tail. Thank you.
Good morning. Where to go? Should have had it ready. Today I will be reading the 23rd Psalms for my Poppy. The Lord is my shepherd, I will not want. He makes me lie in pastures green. He leads me by the still waters. His goodness restores my soul. And I will trust in you alone. I will trust in you alone. For your endless mercy follows me. Your goodness will lead me home. He guides my way in righteousness, and he anoints my head with oil. And my cup, it overflows with joy. I feast on his pure delights. And though I walk the darkest path, I will not fear the evil one. For you are with me, your rod and staff are the comfort I need to know. Thank you.
My name is Liam, and I'm going to be reading this poem for my Poppy. The Lord has shown you what is good. He has told you what he requires of you. You must treat people fairly, you must love others faithfully, and you must be very careful to live the way your God wants you to. Micah 6:8. Thank you.
I'm Carol Humphreys. I had the privilege of being in Barry Jones' Sunday school class, the disciples. When he joined Milledge Avenue Baptist Church in 1998, Barry Jones put his faith into action as a teacher for our disciples' Sunday school class. I quickly learned several things about Barry. First, after marrying Betty, he demonstrated a romantic streak that put some of us to shame. With our class witnessing, he presented his soulmate a bouquet of roses on their anniversary. And the other wives looked at their husband like, why don't you do that? Thank you, Barry. The next thing I noticed was Barry's passion and diligence in preparing his lessons. He always came prepared. He never winged it. Drawing from his rich background of experience with people from all faiths and stations in life, he created a class where people felt free to bring their questions and struggles. As a result, we supported each other as our families grew up, and we grew in faith. At the same time, Barry was also writing a weekly devotional called Sealed Orders. He emailed to our class and a wide circle of friends his homespun gospel. It takes discipline to do a weekly article, but the journalist he did it without fail. Though he had to wait till his second retirement to join us, our Daily Bread ministry was one of his favorites. In 1995, Milledge Avenue joined a group of Athens churches serving daily meals to hungry people. Former pastor Buddy Revels asked Charlie Clegg to recruit a team of retired men and serve a monthly meal at their own expense. Jokingly, we were called bread burners, but soon, with a recipe and menu that met all the minimum daily requirements and tasted good, guests would see us coming and pass the word down the line, "It's the spaghetti guys." Thus, the bread burners became the spaghetti guys. That meal has been served over 1,000 times. The recipe has been refined to a degree that I'm told is locked in a vault in a bank in Atlanta next to the Coca-Cola formula. Finding his niche, Barry became adept at putting 5 peaches on the plate as it came down the line. I'm told he was occasionally chided for holding up the line while engaging people in conversation about their lives. Barry faithfully served until his health prevented it. One of the most meaningful ministries I shared with Barry was building a Habitat for Humanity house as part of the Abraham Alliance. In the aftermath of 9/11, former pastor Edward Boland established a dialogue with Al Huda Islamic Center to calm fears and bring the two congregations together. When the congregation Children of Israel joined the conversation, a partnership began which resulted in building a Habitat for Humanity house as a witness to religious tolerance and mutual respect. While working on that project, I had a very personal exchange with Barry that left a deep impression. There'd been a dust-up at the church, as Baptists are wont to do. Barry was feeling a bit low as we put down baseboards in one of the rooms. Taking him by the arm, I said, "Barry, you're my friend yesterday, you're my friend today, and you'll be my friend tomorrow." We went on with the work, not thinking any more about it. Fast forward to March 16th, last month. John and I paid a last visit to Barry. He was lying in bed, thinner, but lucid and in good spirits. We laughed and told stories. I reminded Barry of one of my favorite sealed orders. Early in Barry's college career, the dean called him in and told him they'd never had the president of the BSU failing classes, and it was time for him to get his act together. Barry took that message to heart and was a scholar for the rest of his academic career. This story resonated with me when my parents visited me in my dorm room after receiving my grade report, giving me the Come to Jesus speech, and told me to shape up or the textile mill would be my career choice. As we prepared to leave that day, Barry repeated word for word what I'd said to him 22 years ago and what it had meant to him. Everyone else had left the room. I took Barry's hand and said, "Barry, you were my friend yesterday, you're my friend today, and you will be my friend for eternity." Tears were streaming down his cheeks and mine. Going home, I remarked to Joan, when my time comes, I can only hope to show the faith, dignity, and courage Barry Jones has shown to us. Rest in peace, my friend.
Barry Jones, I miss you. I miss the way you teased me and made me laugh. You kept me grounded and you made me happy. Your wisdom has guided me in my faith journey. I met Barry and Betty in this wonderful church and quickly came to love them along with the rest of our church family. Barry had a big heart, a generous heart. It was a servant's heart. He served God willingly and faithfully in this place. He was a deacon, a choir member, and one of the best Sunday school teachers ever. His lessons inspired and encouraged us as he taught us truth and wisdom from the Bible and from our faith ancestors. And with his love of history, he taught us about our Baptist heritage and those courageous men and women who came before us, living out their faith in their Baptist tradition. He made me proud to be a Baptist. My friend Barry loved to tease me and make me laugh whenever I walked into Sunday school a few minutes late. Barry, with a twinkle in his eye and that warm smile of his, would announce, "Jan is here. We can get started now." The last time I saw him, a few of us had gathered together at his home to sing some of his favorite hymns. As soon as I walked in the door, he said, "Jan is here. We can get started now." Barry, when we meet again someday and lift our voices with that heavenly choir, I fully expect to hear you say, "We can get started now. Jan is here." One special thing that Barry did for our Sunday school class and many of his other friends was to send out the weekly email that he called sealed orders. These sealed orders were like parables, lessons for life. They were hopeful, encouraging words full of Barry's observations and wisdom, the gospel according to Barry. One of my favorites was about an enormous old oak tree along the side of Highway 441, just south of Madison. I knew that old oak tree, for I had seen it many times before on my travels to and from Moultrie to visit my parents. My dad had pointed it out to me as a child. That tree was huge. It was sturdy and strong, and with graceful, wide-spreading branches. Barry was like that marvelous old oak tree. His faith was strong and steadfast. His life, a gentle reflection of God's abundant love, kindness, and grace. Last Saturday was my birthday. When I went to the mailbox, imagine my surprise to find a card from Betty. Barry had just left us 6 days before, and here she was, remembering my birthday. My eyes filled with tears when I saw that card, and then came even more tears mixed with laughter as I opened it to find a note from Betty and also a note from Barry. Even at the end of his life and in the midst of her grief and heartbreak, Barry and Betty were loving and giving and oh so thoughtful. In closing, I'd like to share a few words from Rabbi Chaim Stern, to love what death can touch. 'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, to hope, to dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings painful joy. 'Tis a human thing to love, a holy thing to love what death can touch. Barry, you touched us all, and we love you so.
All of your words, all of the words have been so full of my precious cousin's husband. Barry could grow anything, couldn't he? I thought of the blackberries the size of small lemons. I thought of the blueberries that hung so adequately, more than adequately, on those bushes. And I kept hoping Barry could see some of those blueberries before he left to go home to heaven. But Barry grew more than just pretty fruit and pretty vegetables, and he did a lot of that. He grew faith in us, didn't he? He grew wisdom in us, didn't he? He grew justice. He grew mercy. He grew integrity. I'm Betty's first cousin, and we lived in separate parts of Ohio, quite a distance apart. So I didn't get to see her a lot, and she was a lot younger than I. But when they came to Georgia, one of the first things Betty did was bring Barry to meet us. And we were so grateful to just begin to know this great man. How could we know, though, the depth of this person? How could we ever fathom how rich his life was with wisdom and integrity? But I was the recipient, as some of you have said, of the sealed orders, and I'm so grateful for that. They came with a weekly dose of wisdom, memories, and I got to know Barry's heart. My son-in-law and daughter received them and loved every word Barry wrote. One of my favorites was a remembrance of what Barry called want versus need. Some of you know that he got his Ford F-150 later in his life. It was called his Cowboy Cadillac, and then I think Annalise named it Poppy's Marvelous Truck. but precious because he spoke about greed in such a way that we all could fathom it. Everybody could hear what he said when we weigh what we want versus what we need. And he said, even though deep down in his heart when he drove around in it, he wanted to say, I love this truck, just love it. Another one that I love so much was about a little-known biblical character named Abigail. It was probably because of what I was going through at the time. But he spoke of never, never, never repay evil with evil, ever. It only brings evil to a home and it rests there. One that taught me about character and how character, he said, Dwight L. Moody said, character is what one is in the dark when nobody's watching. And you knew just from knowing this man what Barry was in the dark. He had such character and such integrity. One of my favorites too, and I love the story To Kill a Mockingbird, when he talked about the day, it was the year 2016 when Nell Harper Lee died, and he talked about Atticus Finch. And Atticus Finch said, to really know someone, you have to get inside of their heart. He said you have to walk around in their skin. And Barry knew to do that about people. He loved people. He believed in people. He wasn't one who passed the woman on the park bench and said, that's not my sister, that's not my mother, because everybody was. Anyway, I'm just so grateful, and one of my deepest gratitudes was to be invited to come during his days of going home to God. Betty and he both were so gracious to let us sit there for a while, just to be in that room and get to have time with this man who had so much. I would love to just sit. I recorded a lot of his voice because I wanted him to tell his stories of journalism and where he'd been. We have a wonderful journalist minister at our church in Milton, Georgia, where his sons kept faithful watch, and where, as he walked through the valley of the shadow of death that you read about, Logan, there was no fear. He let us enter a part of life that I loved because I worked with so many dying people. But Barry shared and lived into his dying moments before his resurrected moments with the same kind of character and integrity and wisdom and love that one has in life. And I loved it. And then he had a sealed order he talked about different things, but he said that he had heard or gotten something on the internet about a woman named Shirley, and only Barry would see this and know that this is something we all needed to read that got the sealed order. But what it said was that Mo was dying, this woman's husband who at that point was 100 years old. When Mo was dying, Mo, Shirley, asked, what will I ever do without you? Mo answered, take the love you have for me and spread it around, for there is beauty. And I thought, so we have a huge amount of stuff to spread around, don't we? Love to spread, because that's who he was, and he wants us to spread it. Thank
you. Will you join in singing this newer version of Amazing Grace? You'll find it on the right side of your program. Will you stand as we sing? that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow. The sun forbear to shine, but God who called me here below will be forever mine, will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
My voice has decided to leave me today, so apologies for the raspiness. In early April, Betty called me, and I knew that likely meant bad news. But as I answered, I was surprised it was Barry and Betty together, and they made the extremely touching ask for me to speak at his celebration of life. I was extremely honored, and in talking with Barry, he shared with me how at peace he felt and that he was proud of the man that I had become. I'm just one of many students who could share the same message that I'm sharing here today. Barry made an immediate impact and a lasting impact on my life. and he and Betty were my second parents during my 4 years here in Athens. Though he's no longer here with us physically, his legacy lives on in the countless lives he changed through his dedicated service in higher education and the kindness and the love that he displayed each and every day. When you hear people talk about Barry and Betty, you always hear the same thing. They had that unique kind of love. There was the envy of all. It's something that I see every day when I think back on the memories of the two of them. It's something that I exemplify as well as I can in my marriage. They set a beautiful example for all of us, and in that example, Barry's spirit and love will live on forever. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for allowing me to join this celebration of the life of my friend Barry Jones. I met him a long time ago under interesting circumstances, but for reasons of HIPAA, I can't tell you about that. I noticed on the front of the program he was given a number of descriptors and accolades. One that is conspicuously absent is compliant patient. However, he was certainly an active patient. He was an active participant. He never failed to give me his opinion of my opinion. And somehow we managed to merge those opinions and actually walk a great path. Barry was a very interesting man. He was a knowledgeable man. He had wisdom far beyond anything that he readily expressed. He taught me many things. As you notice, he was a husband and a very good one. He taught me a lot about being a better husband. He was a father. He taught me a lot about being a good father. A grandfather. He taught me a lot about being a grandfather. He and Betty made wonderful, delicious treats, many of them very sweet. But Barry taught me something else, that anything sweet typically may have some salt and some pepper. Barry had some salt and some pepper. And even though they did not overwhelm the sweetness, they were definitely there. Barry was so much fun to spend time with, and even as he began to move forward in this last phase of his life, he continued to be the very fine man, fine friend with a great sense of humor, which he and I shared generously. I'm going to miss Barry a lot. However, I can tell you this. If I'm able to carry with me the lessons that Barry taught me, maybe one day I will have one of those accolades that's mentioned on the front of this program. Godly man. Thank you. Oh, thank you for that rant. I really appreciate it.
When Betty asked me to speak today, I decided that I would write the letter that I should have written to Barry years ago. I'm really honored to read it to you today. Dear Boss, it's been nearly 25 years since I worked for you in education, communication, and technology in the UGA College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences. Since then, I am so privileged that I've also been able to call you and your beloved Betty my friends all these years. But in my heart, you will always and forever be the boss. To me, the best boss, the person who first believed in my potential. I will never forget our early bond in our very first meeting when we discovered we were both alumni of Baylor University and that Texas held a special place in both our hearts. You would often pop by my office, give me a sick and bears, and we would talk about all things Texas. From that point on, you acted like I could do anything because I was a Texan and a Baylor Bear. You gave me more credit and faith than I deserved as a young and very green professional. Thank you, boss. Now, all these years later, I am the director of an office with a great staff. But in my career at the University of Georgia, you were the leader who showed me how it should be done. From you, I learned that leaders believe in other people. They care about their well-being and their future. They take an interest in their lives. They give it to them straight when they screw up, and they delight when they do a great job. You encouraged me to go to grad school and never stop learning. You gave me my first promotion and my first raise, and I will never forget your exasperation when I didn't make a counteroffer. And you told me, Shannon, you have to negotiate. Stand up for yourself. That was a very big and very valuable lesson. Thank you, boss. One of my favorite memories of you happened during a drive to Tifton for a meeting. That is a long and boring drive, and we'd been in the car for what seemed forever when the George Strait song came on. To this day, I remember what song it was, and I think of you every time I hear it. When I heard you had left us, the very first thing I did was to turn on Baby's Gotten Good at Goodbye and remembered you singing it with great emotion as we barreled down that South Georgia highway. You were never afraid to be yourself, and your authenticity inspired trust and loyalty. Thank you, boss, for just being you. When my first husband died 7 years ago, I was faced with raising a very young child alone, and you were there. You told me I could do this, that I would be okay, that second chances are always possible, and that you were living proof, and that God is with the brokenhearted. And I thought, Barry says that I can do this. I cannot give up. And you were right. Thank you, boss. It seems to me that evidence of a life well lived is the impact you have on other people. You changed the trajectory of my life, and I think about that now with the young professionals who work for me. How can I be the person who gets them ready for their next opportunity? How can I be their Barry Jones? I love you, boss. Rest well. You have earned it.
I'm Cody Jones, Barry's son. It's fitting that I will say that I will talk about my first public speaking engagement because I'm having a hard time doing it. I was 5 in a church smaller than this in Starkville, Mississippi. I was a lad in Royal Ambassadors. For anybody in the room who knows Royal Ambassadors, lads like the bottom. Lads like Squire, Page, and then 3 versions of lad. Lad 1. So pretty early on in my RA journey, and our dad helped our dad helped with Royal Ambassadors. My dad gave me a very important speaking role in a little I guess dialogue of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and I was war. And I came down from the back, not the front. But I came down from the back speaking my lines. And the line I remember, and my dad and I would often share it, this was my first engagement with public speaking. I am war, costly and insatiable. That set the tone for me, quite frankly, in a lot of what I speak about even today. And I was looking at kind of the memories that I wanted to share, and unfortunately, they're all about war. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess I am war, costly and insatiable. But
I do think there was a trajectory that was set for me to be a bit of a contrarian. And it's a contrarianism that is my father's contrarianism. As the cynical journalist, the Marine Corps soldier, the rough and tumble cowboy and pioneer, at least in his own mind, that my father was, there was a hard edge to him. The salt and pepper, as Ferris mentioned. And I'm glad you brought that up, because otherwise it's just kind words today. And the journalist would be so suspicious of kind words, and he'd be looking for what the real story is. So what I want to try to tell is the real story. All the things said today are true, but I want to give that contrarian streak to it. And again, this is I'm not turning this into the roast of my father or anything like that, but I have a certain way that I process things that I hope he would appreciate getting a little sliver of that in today. I want to share 3 memories. One is the most recent memory. I was able to spend a lot of good time with my father before he died. And it was not hard time for me in any way, partly because my dad had been preparing me for his death for many, many years. He and I both share real gallows humor. That's reflective of something very deep in our nature. And some of my favorite memories, actually, in the last 10 years are when we're sitting together, and he's basically saying things like, "I'm just sitting around waiting to die," right? I didn't say, "Oh, that's so morbid," or, like, look on the bright side. I find a lot of our world to be Pollyannish, and I love that candor. I love that honesty. I saw the journalist, the pragmatist in the man, and I would like to try to, for those of you who have those people in your family and don't have a hard time giving them grace, my dad was doing something in those moments that wasn't just, being a jerk, right? He was preparing himself for the moment he's been in the last several months, last several years. He has been a great example of courage to me. And we were lucky in many ways that he did not experience much pain. But death itself is a great pain. The fear of death is a deep pain. And he managed to develop his own spiritual discipline of dealing with that pain. And it was beautiful and a joy for me to watch that with him, and a model for me for the future. And I want to say a couple of things about that piece. It wasn't the kind of spiritual discipline where I'm going to have a faith that tells me everything's going to be okay, and I just know it's going to be okay. He did have that faith. I know many folks will have that conversation, but when he had that kind of conversation with him, but when he and I talked about the afterlife or the assurances we have of the future, it was always couched as a hypothetical, because there was a part of him that knew that this was faith, and that in fact we are staring into a deep darkness, that in a deep unknown that is a core part of wrestling with who we are and what the world is. And he taught me that, and I was really appreciative of those moments. One of the most important memories I have from the last month I was with him was he was very emotional, and he wasn't very emotional all the time, but he had moments where he was becoming very emotional, and he just apologized profusely to me. And he was like, I'm sorry, I'm just getting real emotional. Kind of like I'm doing today, which I know is probably annoying to some of you. It certainly is to me. But I told him, there's not really a right or wrong way to do this, Dad. And he's like, no, I got to be in a Marine Corps. I got to be Marine Corps. That's what he said. And I was like, you can just put that drill instructor inside your heart, wherever it needs to be. It's okay. But I do think that he taught me the right way to die. That stoicism, that discipline, he was self-possessed to the very end. To the extent that he had the energy, he maintained that kind of self-possession. He was self-possession. He was a soldier, and I appreciated that. So I tell you that story too, because I want to stress that along with the deep religiousness, he had a non-religiousness that was pretty strong with him, and he had a lot of religious fervor, especially in his younger life, but I think that was literally beaten out of him by the Marine Corps. I think his any small glimmer of religious speculation he ever had was destroyed in the intellectual challenges of grad school. And I certainly think his career as a journalist, as a newspaper man, taught him a certain cynicism that had to get him out of the newspaper business, not because it rocked his beautiful religious world, but because I think he liked it a little too much, quite honestly. I wasn't there. You might be like, well, that's cool. That's Cody's little gloss on it. But there was a part of him that liked it the way that I kind of liked that. I tell you about his non-religiousness because I have had my own spiritual boot camp in many ways. And you're hearing that today. But I like his Marine Corps experience, there was a time where I had to grow up. And in those experiences, a long period of unemployment, change in work that led to a 60-hour week that's really only in the last 5 years led up. Just burning candles at both ends, raising a young child. I went through a very bitter custody battle when I divorced, and so I appreciate hearing the stories of my father helping others through their divorce, because he went through a very similar sort of crisis in his life as well. Another important memory is from that time. Many of you have talked about how generous my dad was. He was very generous when the generosity was unsolicited. Solicited generosity was a different deal, and I learned very early on, if I'm going to ask for money or anything like that, I need to make a business case for why this is a good investment. I did not ask for money very much. But in the throes of my custody battle, I had nothing. And I was looking at a very expensive case. I don't actually have a memory of asking my father for any help, because it just seemed like a pointless sort of venture. I felt beyond help. He asked me how I was doing or what I planned to do, and the closest thing I could come to asking for help is saying, well, I'm gonna fight this for as long as I can, which was like a month at that point of what would have been a year-long legal struggle. And if anyone has been in a legal struggle, you know that lawyers are not the cheapest people around. His response in the silence of me finishing that statement was to be like, well, we're gonna fight this, we're gonna give this everything we got. And we're gonna take as long as it takes, all the resources that I have. Those resources weren't just money. They were time. In the deepest depths of this struggle, he was there on site helping me take care of a 5-year-old while I worked these long hours. And he's like watching me up in the middle of the night writing RFP proposals, to be a business person and everything. He took care of Henry, picked him up from school, gave him food, gave him clothes, was there right there in the thick of it. And that relationship has been a huge part of our life since it started. I can't say I experienced that as grace at the time, because I lost all sense of grace at that time. I only felt the struggle of it. I only felt that Dad was one of the resources that I had to bring to bear, and I only felt God. In really, probably much of the last 10 years, I've only felt God through the sting of the absence of God. And I think he felt that at certain points in his life. I know I'm going over time, and I'm sorry about that. I have another memory in high school where I was in the process of applying for an ROTC scholarship, and he'd been through the Marine Corps. He'll never fail to remind you how tough he was, and they're the best, and everything like that. But he was politely doing it, but he was asking me, are you sure you're ready for that? Are you sure you're tough enough? I mean, that's ultimately what it came down to. And And I gave him, I'm in high school, so I gave him this, response because I was a good church trained lad. Lab 1, Lab 2, Lab 3. God will provide, or God will give me strength. And he really scoffed at it. I mean, a really kind of biting scoff laughter, like what a joke this response was. And he said a couple of things, and right at the end he said, I prayed a lot during boot camp, and God was not there for me. And I don't say that, here's the big revelation. Guess what? My dad was an atheist. No, that's not the revelation. But I think it's what made his faith really deep, that he actually experienced God's absence, which he could later see as a form of presence. I'm now at a point where I can see that absence as a form of presence. But the presence in that moment was my father. The best compliment I can say about my father is that he has been one of the rare moments of true divinity that I've seen in this world that seems so utterly absent of it sometime. I'm going to give you one story because it was a part of my plan, though this I feel like was an ideal time to cut off my speech, but I'm going to say this one more story. It takes me back to Vicksburg. Again, 4 or 5 years old. My father would take us to Vicksburg, Mississippi. Vicksburg is the site of a big Civil War battlefield. Again, all my things are about war, divorce war, Marine Corps. It's all war and struggle. One of the things I love most about that time, my brother's 9 years old. Maybe we went to Vicksburg after showing sheep in Jackson, but Vicksburg is full of these hills, some naturally cut by the Mississippi River, some built up as the earthworks during the Civil War battle. It was just a perfect place to play King of the Hill. We love playing King of the Hill. I love beating on my brother. I love beating on my dad. I love them beating on me. I'm war costly and insatiable. But Vicksburg has always had a symbolic meaning to me. It's a part of my love of history. It's a part of my love of travel. Ferris can't talk about that because he's under HIPAA constraints. I can talk about it. My dad stayed on the road long too far after he should have stopped being on the road. And he had some medical issues related to it. But he loved travel. Those trips to Vicksburg gave me the seed of so many things. But most importantly, it sat on the Mississippi River. And everybody knows the Mississippi River is the symbol, it's the threshold of the West. That has always defined my horizon. My father gave me a sense of the expansiveness and the horizon of a world. He kept alive a possibility of transcendence when there didn't seem to be anything that was transcendent at all in this world. He has gone west. He has ridden off into the sunset. He has ridden into uncertain, uncharted, unknown lands. He has given me the bravery to do it in the way that I will have to do it eventually in my life. Thank you very much for your time.
Wow. If you can't tell, Barry was a fascinating guy. I don't think most of us saw all of these different aspects of his life. But most of all, he was much loved. When I think of Barry, I think of the many conversations we had in person and via email and texts. The past few months spent with him were holy moments. Hearing stories of his life, updates of his sons and grandchildren, talking about politics, one of his favorite subjects, theology and Baptist history. Every few weeks I'd get an email from Barry. Usually it was a forward of some article that he had read or seen that he thought I would appreciate, and it always followed up with a great conversation about that. Often it would be about Baptist in the news or some theological issue he had been thinking about or wrestling with. During a visit a few months back, Barry told me that he and his grandmother had an ongoing bet. It concerned the afterlife. Would we recognize each other on the other side? Barry said yes. His grandmother said no. He laughed and said he was really looking forward to finding her and saying, "I told you so." On a more recent visit, Barry wanted to meet with me alone, and we spent a while catching up before he asked, "Nathan, what is heaven going to be like?" I admitted, I haven't spent much time thinking about that. Actually, I know not nearly as much as you have lately. I also confess that the whole topic gets confusing with all the books written, songs, and poems about the topic. But when I've tried to reduce it down to its most basic element, I think heaven is simply being present with God. He smiled and nodded and said, "Me too." Then he told me that when he thinks about death, when he thinks about heaven, he keeps coming back to the scene of Jesus hanging on the cross, conversing with the repentant thief. Barry explained, Jesus told that thief, "Today you will be with me in paradise." With me, being with God. I like that, he said. May it comfort us that Barry is there now, hanging out with his grandmother and with other family members who have died and enjoying an eternity with Jesus. When I think of Barry, I think of Toby Keith's song, "Should Have Been a Cowboy." Every time I visited with Barry, there was always a story from his days living in Texas, or about a visit to the hill country and how he just couldn't seem to convince his new bride that that's where they needed to be. The walls of their home was filled with artwork, and Betty says that there's lots more under beds and in closets, all of paintings and prints from Texas. In the room where he spent his last days, there was a picture of a home that reminded him of his place in Uvalde. The print of a snorting buffalo was also there, and a small painting of two cowboys riding into the sunset. All of those, as he talked about them, sparked memories, stories, and smiles. Betty said that when Barry died, the angels came to take his soul to heaven and took him for a flyover over Texas on their way. I corrected her that I think Barry believed that that was the destination. Instead of streets of gold, Barry would prefer to walk across rolling hills of bluebells, perhaps with a pond and a mermaid sunning on the shore. Barry loved life. He loved a good meal, especially when it was enjoyed with friends. He loved a good belly laugh. I don't think Barry was capable of chuckling. At least I never heard it. Every laugh was a full-on guffaw. Our Tuesday morning men's Milledge Avenue breakfast at Mama's Boy was always punctuated by laughter. It was always my goal to get one of those laughs at my expense or by something that I said. It always made my day brighter. Those breakfasts have been a lot quieter the past month or so. Barry loved his family. He was proud of each of you. He bragged on your accomplishments and relished hearing and telling others about your endeavors. His main concern when entering hospice was not that this last journey of life was going to be hard or might leave him in pain, but it was about the pain that it would cause you. He told me that many times. He was afraid that this last days and these last weeks would be a burden on you and would cause you pain and unhappiness. Betty, you and Barry demonstrated the true meaning of your wedding vows, for better or for worse. I smiled each time I was at your house when you two were in the room together. You were always touching, always holding hands, caressing, smiling, and speaking with tenderness and care. May we all love our partners that way. Barry loved God and loved the many churches he had been a part of. He never strayed far from church, no matter where he lived. He's been a pastor, a deacon, a Sunday school teacher, a choir member, and a faithful, supportive, involved church member throughout his adult life. If there was a financial need, Barry would write a check to help. He supported staff and reached out to members who were sick or lonely. He was an incredible Sunday school teacher. He enjoyed helping the church thrive and function well. And he loved hearing about what was going on around church, especially in the days he couldn't get here himself. He loved church history and theology. He loved reading and writing about faith heroes, especially those in our Baptist lineage. And each time we talked about a particular pastor or hero we had read about or that I had seen, chances are Barry knew that person and was friends with him. Barry loved music, and a few months ago, several of us gathered in their living room. With Tom at the electric piano, we sang through some of the favorite hymns that Karen played earlier. And between each one, Barry explained why that hymn was important and special to him. What an incredible afternoon. What a holy moment. Watching him sing and hearing his stories, often he had a tear trickling down his cheeks as he sang. One highlight of his illness, if I can dare say such a thing, was Barry hearing from the many people whose lives that he touched and influenced along the way. For many of you, former students, colleagues, church members, and friends reach out to he and Betty over the past few months to express their gratitude for the influences that he had on them. Barry was aghast. He said, "I never knew I had touched that many people." Barry lived his life with joy and enthusiasm. May he be an example to us all to love life, to love our family and friends, and to express that love to those that we love, and to do so often, and to live our lives with no regrets. Barry, rest in peace, my brother. May we join you on the other side, and we look forward to that huge bear hug and a big belly laugh and introductions to your grandmother and to Jesus and a tour of heaven, where you have lived and will live your eternities. Amen. Let's pray together. God, we thank you for Barry Jones, for the life he lived, the Savior that he loved, and the lessons that he has left us with. May his legacy live on in our lives as we hold on to these memories. And may that guide us in our journeys as we love and care for others as he did. Be with his family now as they grieve. May they receive the same joy from their faith and from each other as he did. In Christ's name.